Well, hello and welcome to another episode of More Perfect Marketing. My name is David Baer, and today I am chatting with a guy who, frankly, when I heard what he did for a living the first time, I was incredibly intimidated. And then I saw his smiling face and I realized, oh, wait a second. I'm a little confused. Now I understand. There's a philosophy, not a attitude behind the fact that he is a three-time, I don't even remember the qualification now as I'm about to say it, but a three-time champion in martial art discipline, which I can't remember, and you're gonna jump in and tell me what it is in a moment, and has taken this concept and actually built the idea into the work that he's been doing, training people on leadership in an area he calls black belt leadership. So I've already fumbled over this introduction, so I think we might as well move on to actually telling people that John Terry is here on the show today. Welcome, John.
Hey, thank you so much, David, for the invitation to be with your group. I'll clarify a little bit of the story there. Yes. I held fighting titles in 4 states for 3 consecutive years when I competed nationally in the sport karate circuit. I'm a 2-time Martial Arts Hall of Fame inductee. And I have black belts or equivalent black belts in 5 different martial arts systems.
Yeah. See why I was intimidated, folks? It sounds a little frightening. And then I got to meet John. And when you go to his website, which I'll share with you later, you will see it says, be a black belt leader. And then you see John's smiling face right next to that. So a lot less intimidating there. I want to talk about some of the black belt leader concepts. But before we get there, I want to shift to something that you and I have been talking about over the last couple of weeks in various correspondence. And that's the fact that I am a TMIR. Now, I have no idea what that means, but I wonder if you can help put that into some context for the folks that are listening today.
Absolutely. David, when we think about sales, marketing, running an organization, the most important thing you've got to be able to do in business is to understand your customer, to be able to get inside their head, understand what they're thinking, how they live life, what's important to them, what keeps them awake at night, and what their goals and objectives are. And one of the things I've been using for the last 15 years is a tool that's part of our Black Belt Leadership brand. And it comes from a company that I'm also privileged to have the opportunity to run. And that company is called Real Life Management. And we have developed what we call attitude psychographics. Long story short, or make the definition very simple, it's a 3-minute tool that we use to do an MRI of an individual just like you, so that in 3 minutes or less, I can understand how you think, how you process and prioritize information, how you want to be communicated with, how you prefer to learn, and more importantly, how you want to live life in such a way that you're going to be able to see success. Now, if as a sales professional, if as a coach, trainer, whatever it is I do, if I know those things about you before I begin to engage, I can take my wisdom or my experience or my knowledge, whatever it may be, and I can personalize that to who you are. Speak your language, so to speak, so that I can give you what's important to you in the way in which you want to receive it, so that when we're done with our training or coaching or whatever we're doing, you walk away feeling like you've got what you needed. I understood you as an individual. And as a result of that, I've served your needs at an exceptionally high level. And you walk away thinking, man, this guy knows more about me than my wife, my brother, my sister, my mom, my dad. And he's absolutely amazing. I've got to go tell everybody about this black belt leader guy.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. And so the TMIR thing that I mentioned a moment ago is actually the results that I got when I went through this super easy process. What you did was you asked both my business partner, Ken, and myself to fill out the survey, which literally takes minutes to do, because it's looking at different words describing whether we sort of associate ourselves with those words.
That's right.
And that's pretty much it. Right.
That's it.
And the combination of those things will then tell the software that is then determining, which category we fit into, how to interpret who we are, to then give this over to whoever's, using the survey to be more effective in dealing with me as the person who's filled it out. right?
You're
So
absolutely correct. Yeah.
so the T was tactical. The
Mhm.
M was mellow or ministry. The I
Mhm.
was independent and I associate with this the latter a little bit more impulsive,
Impulsive. Yeah.
and the R is rational.
Right.
And as you then sent the reports to me and to Ken, we started comparing notes, and we were shocked how incredibly dialed in this is. And it was like a little spooky, in fact.
Well, it's interesting. I have an opportunity to work with some HR people from time to time. And one of the common complaints I always hear is we have a revolving door. People look good on paper and we hire them. And as a result of hiring them, we think we've hired the right person. And then we put them in the job that we want them to serve and they can't do it. Well, what we've learned is that people can go pay good money to have a resume doctored up to make themselves look really great on paper. They can go out and pay people to clean up their social media and to fix up their LinkedIn and Facebook profiles so they look the part of the job they're applying for. And they can even be coached in what to say to get the job that they're looking for, but not have the skill set to pull it off. So, what if in 3 minutes or less, an HR person could utilize a tool like ours to know how that person is actually going to live life and whether or not they can do the job you hire them to do? If you're going to be working as a coach or a consultant and you're going to ask that client to do something and you know whether or not they're actually going to follow through, is that valuable to know in advance? Yeah, I think so. And that's one of the many ways we've learned to use attitude psychographics, or what I like to refer to as behavioral psychographics, to understand people's behaviors. And what we know is under stress or distress, our behaviors change. And learning to recognize those can be valuable because if you know, or I know, things I may be doing that's going to stress the other party out I'm working with, and I want to have a harmonious relationship, wouldn't I like to know what stresses you out or stresses your partner out if I were going to be working with you? That's another valuable asset of using this tool that we've been utilizing successfully over the last 30 years.
So I'm curious because as you've just sort of taken the helm of the real life management company after being sort of a user, a client of theirs for a while, and obviously you're looking for ways to get it out there and get it utilized in different disciplines, different areas. And so as soon as you showed this to me, I was thinking, well, the thing that I love about it is the how to communicate. And how could a business or a solopreneur who is serving somebody insert this into their initial engagement, onboarding with a new client, et cetera, in a way that is both practical, but also welcomed by the client to say, yes, I'd be happy to fill out this survey to tell you how to communicate with me. And that's one of the positioning challenges that you may have, or maybe it's a very easy thing. I'm sort of curious how you think through how a business can take this and put it in between them and the individual or the people they serve to utilize it most effectively without it being kind of awkward, I guess.
Yeah, that's a great question, David. And I'll give you an example. We've done this with car dealerships. We've done this with restaurants. We've done this with people that work with clientele on a regular basis. But one of my favorite stories to tell in terms of how easy this is to learn once you've had a chance to go through our training. When my middle daughter was 13 years of age, I've been training and teaching real life management concepts to coaches and consultants for 15 years. And my daughter, who was homeschooled, traveled with me when I would train and teach. And she came one day and she's going through as I'm teaching real life. And she says, Dad, can I just not do homework today and listen to what you're doing? I said, sure. So she goes through the training that I did with a group of financial advisors that wanted to use this in their financial practice to understand their customer better. She went through the training. We will go back that night to my martial arts school because at that time I owned 3 schools. Mm-hmm. So she's getting ready for her next rank advancement test. And as we broke the students up to go practice, she's standing in the corner with her hand on her chin, shaking her head. And I said, Jessie, you're supposed to be practicing. She said, Dad, Mr. Kyle's teaching wrong. Well, I look over at Mr. Kyle and he's teaching technique to a student and doing it flawlessly. I said, Jessie, what do you mean? And she pointed at the student and she learned from just 8 hours of training how to recognize that primary person's communication and learning style. And she said, Billy is a big picture thinker. And until Billy understands why we do a high block and how you use it to defend yourself, he's not going to practice it well. And so I have said, Kyle, show him how we do this in self-defense. And the minute Kyle did that illustration, Billy's eyes lit up and he started practicing with intensity. I turned to my 13-year-old daughter. I said, who else is teaching wrong? She said, well, Miss Callie's teaching wrong. I said, what do you mean? She says, well, she's working with Betty. And she says, Betty is one of these people that wants to learn step by step, very tactical like you, but she's giving her too much information. She needs to give her 3 steps and let her learn those, and then give her 4, 5, and 6 and let her build and learn what she's doing. And so I shared that with Callie, and Callie changed her teaching style. And all of a sudden, Betty began to put the steps together in the sequence she was learning and started to master that. So I turned to my daughter a third time and I said, now who's messing up in class? She said, well, Mr. Dave's messing up. I said, why? She says, he's back there with Tommy, and Tommy needs a high five and a pat on the back, because if he's not being encouraged and told he's doing a good job, he's not going to stick around. And my 13-year-old daughter, after just 8 hours of training, was able to come in that night to my black belt instructor certification that I do with my instructors every week, and taught them how to recognize how the students in our school live life, wanted to communicate, and wanted to learn. And when we did that, retention in our school increased by almost 50%. Parents started coming to us saying, how is it you can communicate with our kids and we can't? Well, as a result of that, I picked up a number of coaching clients to begin to coach those parents how to communicate, interact, and build relationship with their kids, which is one of the teaching systems that we teach. And just learning by recognition and seeing how people live life, after you've been in the real life system a while, you can pick it up and recognize almost immediately the primary learning style and the primary communication style of an individual. It's that simple once you have an opportunity to go through and learn the methodology.
It's brilliant, because I was thinking as I was asking this question about kind of the awkwardness of, hey, could you go fill out this survey? But if you can do it through recognition,
that's right.
Right. It's also probably easier to then practice what you need to do as the business owner, as the service provider,
yeah,
because you're really tapped into, you don't have to separate yourself from, okay, I just read this report. Now I got to remind myself what I'm supposed to do.
That's right.
Yeah, you're observing and you're saying, okay, yeah, it switches on immediately. This is how I need to engage in order to help them, with the outcome that I'm trying to help them achieve.
That's right. Yeah. And another way we use it is we have a paper version of our online tool. And when I teach financial advisors, and I've taught a couple of auto dealerships to use this program, they actually will have the survey on a clipboard. And as they meet with the client individually, one of the things they'll tell them is, I want to make sure that this time we're together is meaningful. And I want to make sure I communicate with you in a way that's going to meet your expectations and exceed them. This little tool will help me do that. Would you mind taking 3 minutes to complete this, so I know how to speak to you in a way that is not offensive, that will serve your needs well, and make sure I give you the information you need to make a good decision whether or not what I'm going to show you works for you. And when they use that, nobody has ever said no. And a lot of the dealerships will say, the other thing we do with this is once a month, we're going to give away 2 dinners to one of the fantastic restaurants there in town. And if you complete this, whether you buy or not, we're going to put your name in a drawing. And at the end of the month, you may get 2 tickets to Ruth Chris or whatever the big restaurant they're giving away. And it can serve as an incentive to get them to take the survey.
I love this. There's so many places that this plugs into a well-conceived marketing strategy. And so I want to kind of make this connection, because
Absolutely.
you've just given examples of, the very last example you gave was basically database building, which was
right.
Getting people onto your list to be able to market to.
Yeah.
But the exchange in the sales meeting where you're saying, this is, I'm asking you these questions in order to make sure that I'm delivering the right value, right?
Right.
And that this is time well spent together, is a confidence building mechanism as well for the buyer.
That's right.
And then obviously the results of observing and then serving them properly, as you referenced earlier with your school, is all about higher retention.
Yep.
All right, which is lower cost on than going out and finding a whole bunch of new students.
That's correct. Yeah. Well, and think about it another way too. When we go back to sales and marketing, if I can understand who I'm talking to, And I've got an email sequence that I'm going to be dripping on those people after they engage with me in some way. Maybe I need to go back and think into not one email sequence, but a different email sequence based upon how each of the different groups, and there's 3 primary groups that we teach about, have an opportunity to live life. So I'm speaking to the heart-centered group one way. I'm speaking to the logical group a different way. And I'm speaking to those who have a little bit of both in the way they live life, a third and tertiary way that allows me to speak their language in my email follow-up sequence, or my physical, if I'm doing physical mail, whatever sequence I'm doing to follow up. Now I'm personalizing those messages to the way they want to receive them. How much more attractive is that going to be? And how much more confidence and trust are you going to gain when your follow-up sequence actually speaks the language of that consumer?
That's kind of mind-blowing. I talk about, email segmentation, but I've never thought about it in this regard, around the psychology of how somebody would like to consume. It's mostly been about, what are they interested in, or, what lead magnet did they opt in with, and how do you, follow up based around the interest they've expressed.
Right.
But this is a very interesting way of being able to follow up, probably even more effectively in some situations, because of the way that they think or operate, or behave.
Exactly. Well, think of it this way. Here's what we know from 30 years of clinical research. At best, unless you know this methodology, you and I are only 40% as effective as we could be in communicating with people. Because out of all the 3 major communication styles that are out there that we teach, at best, the way you speak, think, and communicate is only going to connect with 40% of your audience. So if you could improve that by having an opportunity to speak their language, and I could go from being 40% effective to 60% effective, I just got a 50% increase in my effectiveness by simply learning how to communicate based upon the way people think and process information and want to learn.
Okay, I want to shift gears a little bit, because this is one of the tools in your toolkit, and you got a lot more when it comes to training leaders, training business owners, training whether it's managers in an organization, et cetera. I'm curious to sort of understand a little bit more about your approach to leadership, because it's not the type of stuff that I hear in most business leadership books. So this one was a little bit out of the box. I'm curious. I remember getting you have a 10 essential traits list that I remember getting at some point. Maybe we'll send people to look at that at the end of the episode here. What are the other sort of unusual, uncommon, but highly effective things that you might want to share here in terms of leadership that might be appropriate for this audience?
When I think about the way that I teach leadership, David, it's a little different in the approach, because I come at it from, almost 50 years in the martial arts. And in the martial arts, if you go back to the origins of that, you weren't taught the very important things about the martial arts and how to apply that in life or death scenarios until you spent time gaining the trust and confidence of the instructor. And the first year of training in martial arts was all about learning 2 things: learning to lead yourself well and learning to make good choices. And once you demonstrated that you could lead yourself well, that you were a person of good value and a person of character that could be trusted not to abuse what you were going to be taught, only then were you taught how to essentially kill somebody using the martial arts to defend yourself. There was that much protection over that methodology that could be so dangerous in the wrong hands. But one of the things I learned from that is the fact that most people don't realize that they're leading, even if they're not at the top of an organization. Everybody is leading someone somewhere every single day. And the question we always have to ask ourselves is, how well are we leading? Well, that comes back to the fact of whether or not we've taken the opportunity to look within ourselves and really discover what I like to call the black belt leader within. And I believe every person that's listening to our podcast today has an opportunity to discover their own unique giftings and skill set as a leader. And when we think of a leader, we may think of somebody that runs an organization or somebody that runs a company, but you may be leading at home, and we may not see that at leadership. If you're a husband and you've got a wife and you've got children, you're in a role of a leader. but most people don't think of that as leading. Maybe you're involved in a church or a synagogue and you're teaching a class, or you're helping out with something in that synagogue or in that religious group, and you are helping a group of people achieve a goal or an objective. That's leadership. Most people don't think of that as being a leader. But as a result of that, and especially in sales, most people don't think of the fact that they want to be seen as an authority figure or as an expert to attract the right type of customer to them so they stand out in the crowd. But to be an authority figure and an expert means you also have to be the leader in that field. And most people don't make the connection because they say, well, I don't have to be a leader. I'm a sales professional. Well, when you meet with a client, you are leading that client on a journey of discovery to identify their fear, their anxiety, their concern, whatever that may be, so that you can help them solve that goal, that objective, to take that pain away, to make that fear go away, to bring about an outcome that they want. But if you haven't learned to effectively lead yourself, you're going to lack the confidence. You're going to lack the ability to effectively communicate. You're going to lack the ability to take decisive action. You're going to lack the ability to be bold in your statements to your client to say, this is what you need to do to see success. And as a result of that, you can't be the expert that you want to be if you don't learn how to discover, develop, and deploy your own unique black belt leader within. And I see far too many sales professionals focus so much on the selling aspect of what they do, they forget the all-important leadership aspects. Mm-hmm. And I want to bring it back to really one thing there. Leadership starts with how we think. And if we think about how we think, the quality of our thinking is going to determine the choices that we make. And the choices that we make are going to dictate the outcomes that we have for ourselves and the customers we're serving. And if we're not constantly learning how to lead ourselves better, how to make better choices and become a better version of ourselves, at some point, we get into the Ray Kroc story of as long as you're green, you're growing, but once you're ripe, you start to rot. And when we stop developing ourselves, it's like we become the tomato that's been disconnected from the vine. Mm-hmm. If you eat it right then, it's great. You come back a few days later, it's turned gray. You come back a week later, it's gnarled up, it's black, it's nasty, and nobody wants to eat it. But if we truly want to be world-class in whatever it is that we do, and we want to master our trade, we want to master our profession, or master our craft, we've got to learn to discover, develop, and deploy that black belt leader within us, and learn every day to become a better version of ourselves.
I love how leadership really is in all of us, or a trait of all of us. I hear this in sales as well, and I imagine that you could replace the word leadership with selling.
That's right.
In as much as, a lot of people will say, well, I'm not comfortable with sales, but in fact, you are in fact selling something to someone at some point each and every day, whether it's selling, your kid on doing something, taking action, your spouse on something, or you're actually selling within a business. And I imagine that leadership is very much the same thing as you've described it, which I've never really thought about that way.
It is. Yeah. When we think about how we lead life, we're leading ourselves every day. And and people do what people see. And so if I walk in as a leader and I'm confident, I'm bold, I'm decisive, and when I speak with a client, I speak with authority as a leader. Now I am seen as the expert. Now I'm seen as the authority figure, the person that, when I messed my knee up, I didn't go see a general practitioner. I went to see a guy that is a specialist in working on knees. And when I get with this orthopedic surgeon and I walk in, the minute he walks in the door, he exudes the fact that I know exactly what I'm going to do. I had prostate cancer 9 years ago. And when I was told I had an advanced form of prostate cancer, and I was sent from my urologist to a specialist, and I walked in the door, the minute he walked in the door, he said, this is how we're going to treat this condition. And this is the outcome you're going to experience as a result of that. There was such a peace that came over me that I'm working with somebody who knows what they're doing, because while he was selling me on the process that he was going to do to literally save my life, he was leading as an authority figure and as an expert in such a way that it gave me the confidence that if he told me go jump off a roof and do a backflip on the way down and he'd catch me, I'm on the top of the roof jumping. Yeah. And that's what we want to see in our business. If we're not leading in our business, no matter what we're doing, selling, manufacturing, no matter what it is, we're not going to achieve the level of success that we want in life. And people miss that all the time.
Well, you just, gave this example of, the surgeon walking into the room and telling you what's going to happen. And I had the exact opposite with a medical professional who, when I don't even remember what it was, what the issue was, but they walked in, they were uncomfortable, nervous. They were not confident about, telling me the process. And we don't really think about, in the medical world that they're selling, but they are.
That's right. They
because
are selling.
I had a choice. Am I going to proceed with what I'm here for or not? And in that case, I was very uncertain about whether what they were telling me was going to happen was something I wanted to do. Whereas if they had approached it differently, the way that your guy did, I probably would have had a very different feeling about the situation. And I see this as, again, going back to what we were talking about earlier in terms of the confidence that you build in somebody who is a prospect about your ability to deliver based on the way that you perform, the questions you are asking, the sort of direction that you're mapping out of where things are going to go in a way that reinforces their happiness with their decision to show up and be in that room with you in the first place.
That's right. Yeah. Sales is a process of leadership. It starts as discovery. And then from there, you go and you do the research to figure out how you're going to solve the problem or create the outcome. Then you've got to go back and deliver the solution and ultimately get the client's buy-in. All of that is leadership steps that you're walking an individual through to lead them. And remember, sales is leadership. Lead them into making a buying decision that's ultimately in their best interest. But if you lack the leadership skills to do that, I don't care how good you think you are at selling. If you're not leading as a sales professional, you're leaving a lot of opportunity to help people on the table that you otherwise could solve a problem or achieve an outcome for them that would make their life better. But it only comes when you discover, develop, and deploy that black belt leader within that takes place.
I love all this. And you and I have known each other for about half a year now. I think we met back in the summer, or maybe it was even January of 2020. I can't remember
which. Early 2020.
Early 2020. Okay. So it's coming up on almost a year that
Yes,
since we first met. And everybody loved your radio voice and your headset at that event where you and I first met. And I really appreciate all that I've learned from you thus far. And I know that there's a lot more that I will be learning from you. But for all of the folks who are just meeting you today, how do they get to learn more about you and what you have to teach?
David, the easiest way for your audience to connect with me is to go visit my website, beablackbeltleader.com. When they go to the website, they've got an opportunity to grab the 10 character traits of what it means to be a leader. I've got a nice graphic there that they can print off, hang on the wall, or they can reach out, and I'm happy to send them a poster that they can put up just as an inspirational piece that's there. I have a weekly leadership newsletter where I talk about leadership in a variety of settings, sales, marketing, C-suite exec, mid-exec, wherever it may be, learning how to lead yourself well and make good choices. That goes out once a week. They can go to my contact page, connect to my social media, my podcast, training tab. There's a number of free resources available. And then we have a variety of online content that they can go and actually train and begin to discover their own black belt leader and how to cultivate, grow that so they can make a bigger and greater impact in who they are and what they do.
Excellent. Be a blackbeltleader.com. Well, I'll make sure to have a link to that in the show notes as well. And John Terry, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom here with our audience today. Really appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much, sir. Absolutely. It was my pleasure.
All right. Folks, you've been listening to another episode of More Perfect Marketing. Hope to see you back here again real soon. Take care.